Every so often, a player comes along who crosses more than a try line. They cross borders. Jamie Salmon is the only man who's played Test rugby for the All Blacks in England, a feat no one's matched. Born in Hong Kong, arguably forged in New Zealand, reborn in England, his story is about courage, adaptability and identity. But what's just as interesting is what came after rugby. Jamie moved from the pitch into leadership, commentary, business, where he's got sports sponsorship and partnership agency and community impact. From Sky Sports, pundit and Telegraph columnist, to chairing the England Rugby International Club, supporting injured players and keeping the game's values alive. He's also clear that the values of rugby, respect, humility, connection, teamwork still outweigh its current injury crisis. And the sport's biggest challenge today isn't safety, it's staying connected to its people. Today, we'll dig into what made him elite, how he led, how he handled adversity, what business can learn from that kind of mindset, and why rugby must never lose its roots. Jamie Salmon, welcome to the Business End.
Thank you, Liam. One of the longest introductions I've ever had, I think, but thank you for that anyway.
Sorry about that. Blame the script writer, which is Fitzy.
Welcome to the show, Jamie. Let's crack on and get into it. Jamie, we like to start with an opening question where we dig into what makes you, your DNA. So when you look back, what do you feel was in your DNA that made you perform at such an elite level in two completely different rugby systems?
It's an interesting one. I like winning. I was the third of four brothers, so I lost a lot in the garden and various other places, but I like winning. I think New Zealand in the amateur days was way ahead of the other nations in terms of the way they went about it and approached it. And I learned very quickly in New Zealand that attitude will always be better than ability. If your attitude to whatever sport, whatever thing you're doing or whatever, it will always outweigh the abilities that you've got. And the guys with the most ability in my time tended to be on the lazy side because they could do it, and they were natural handlers of the ball or with their feet or whatever the case may be. And the guys with attitude invariably went past them. And I learned very early in my New Zealand time. So, for instance, I was playing at Blackheath over here, went to New Zealand, and after about 4 sessions, they said to me, "We think you can probably play a bit, but you're just nowhere near fit enough. You don't come here to get fit. You get fit in your own time. You come here for us to coach you and make you a better rugby player," which was a bit alien to me. I was an 18-year-old kid. I hadn't had any experience, but it was that very quick realization that if you want to make it at whatever level it might be, club level, provincial level, test match level, you got to put in some graft and some hard yards and go the extra mile.
Well, it's interesting you say that. Looking back, I mean, people just assumed if you turned up on a Tuesday and Thursday, that was your job done. And, when we did interact with Kiwis in those early days, as you say, they were so far ahead of most of us in terms of their preparation and their commitment and their diligence to the game.
Yeah, and there's quite an interesting backstory about this, Jamie. You said, if I've got my research right, that you didn't make the Kent under-19 side, and that basically drove you to travel across the other side of the world. Is that correct? And if so, where did that drive come from as an 18-year-old to go to New Zealand?
Well, I mean, I was an 18-year-old kid. I was playing for Blackheath seconds and third team. I went for a Kent under-19 trial. Got a couple of tries, but I did all right. But in those days, one of the club coaches was invariably the county coach and wanted to go with his guy from his club. So I missed out on the Kent under-19s. I went to Blackheath training on the Monday, Tuesday, had a moan about it. A couple of Kiwi lads were there who were doing their overseas experience, playing a bit of rugby in the winter to do Europe in the summer. And they said, "Why don't you come and play for our club in New Zealand?" I mean, it started like that in late November, whatever year, 77. 2 months later, I was in New Zealand, having told my folks that that's what I wanted to do. And I went for one season. But it went so well that after 2 months, I was in the Wellington provincial squad. I was on the bench for the opening game in the championship, which was Wellington against Counties up at Counties in Pukekohe. I was on the bench. I came on with 20 minutes to go, and from playing Blackheath seconds and thirds, opposite me was Bruce Robertson, who played 66 times for New Zealand, who BJ Robertson, who sadly passed away a couple of years ago. I mean, legend, hero, you name it. And I thought, whatever it is beyond surreal, this is it, you know. So it was quick, it was fast, and it was really interesting because Bruce Robertson taught me a big lesson afterwards. He went to Stu Wilson and said, "Can you introduce me to Jamie? I'd just like to say hello, how are you, good day," and all the rest of it, which I thought was just unbelievable that Bruce Robertson would want to come across and say, "Hi, how did you get here?" as an 18-year-old kid. And there was this 32-year-old legendary All Black who just wanted to do that, which I thought showed real humbleness, if you like.
How old were you, Jamie, when you first got your cap for New Zealand? Was it you 20, 21?
Yeah, 3 years later, I was an All Black, yeah, 21.
What a remarkable story. You leave Kent when you're 18, playing for Blackheath second team, third team, and then all of a sudden 2-3 years later, you're an All Black. It's just
I think
just
the same
off the
guy
scale.
was still coaching Kent under 19s. Anyway, not that I'm massively bitter and twisted about it.
Did
Yeah,
you say
it just accelerated really quickly. I mean, I was very lucky. I was playing in a really good provincial team, and as many have said, I had the easiest job in New Zealand rugby, playing inside Stu Wilson and Bernie Fraser. And you know, Stu was an established All Black, Bernie became one, and they were very different guys. But you know, again, Stu Wilson was really interesting with me because I got a bit ahead of myself, and he said, "What are you doing 12:30 Monday?" And I said, "Not a lot. We work quite closely to each other." And I went to his office, and he came out with two mates going for a run. And he said, "This is what we do on Mondays and Wednesdays. We go for a run." And this is pre-gym time, so I'm showing my age, and Wellington's a very hilly place and all the rest of it. Come Wednesday, I was there with them. And every Monday, Wednesday, that's what we did. We ran the hills of Wellington to go the extra mile, show that we wanted to do it a bit more, and that when we weren't training, we were tip-top and pristine and all the rest of it. So, and he was another guy that he, you know, said to me, one-on-one is good odds for us. And he wasn't an arrogant man. He was not an arrogant man. But, you know, I then later on played with Rory Underwood. I knew one-on-one was really good odds with Rory. I mean, and the same with Stu and the same with Bernie, because you'd back them on a one-on-one basis. You didn't need to create an overlap. You didn't need to do a bit more. You had to work it out and you had to pass it in the breadbasket. But one-on-one can be really good odds for some players.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's fair to say as well. I mean, well, perhaps I'm putting words into your mouth here. I apologise for that. But did not being picked for Kent under 19s, did that sense of perceived failure, did that drive you? Did that motivate you? Because it's one like almighty way to bypass or force a selection process and say, right, I'm going to show you and get an All Black cap.
Yeah, I mean, it's and one of the things they celebrate, and what's really, I don't know, I can't speak for, apart from England, any other nations. One thing they really celebrate is your All Black number. I'm AB818. And a lot of people, I mean, Andrew Mertens calls me 818. Whenever I see Mertz, he just calls me 818. Whereas the England guys, to be honest with you, it was only 2 or 3 years ago that I went and found out what my England number is. And a lot of players around my vintage, I doubt, have any idea. The All Blacks maybe go a bit over the top on it, but they, you know, every time you see something about an All Black, that he's done something post his career or whatever, they will refer to the All Black number. And I you know, I bump into Kiwis occasionally and they say, "What's your All Black number?" And it's a massive thing for them, and that sense of achievement, if you like, that's just the way they do it. It is, you know, part of their DNA.
Want to pick up on what Liam said there. I mean, I think, well, at least what I'm picking up from your story with Kent under 19, ultimately selection is an opinion, right? And you know, the coach at the time, rightly or wrongly, went with someone he knew, but it's that reaction to that setback, right? That it seems to have motivated you to get on a plane, go to the other side of the world and challenge yourself, right? I mean, you could have just sulked about it, but you know, it says a lot about your character to put yourself out there, especially at such a young age. and challenge yourself. And that's a great lesson there, I think, for any of the listeners. Setbacks are inevitable. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong, but they happen, and it's what you do with that setback that sets you apart.
It is. I mean, mine was a bit drastic. 12,000 miles. I knew one person in New Zealand when I got there. Were there times where I wanted to pack a bag and come home? Absolutely, without question. I was lucky in the environment that I went into. Really lucky, because as you guys know, I think I did arrive on a Sunday, and in those days there was no bars. Not that I needed a bar to be open. There were no movies open, no petrol stations, nothing. It was dead. And I went training on the Tuesday, and suddenly I'm surrounded by like-minded people and like-minded souls. And within 2 or 3 weeks, I've got 10, 15, 20 guys who will buy me a beer, which sounds totally simplistic. But for me, that was incredibly comforting.
Yeah.
And out of that, down the line, 2 or 3 become really close mates. Somebody says there might be a job opening or offer for you, or whatever the case may be, which is what the rugby network can do. But it was walking into a dressing room, like there's a copper, there's somebody in finance, there's a carpenter, there's a truck driver, and there's usual cross section of people. They don't give a damn what you do. You're just a guy that plays the same club as you do. Hey, and as you do, we'll back you, and you're one of us, and we'll try and look after you. And a lot of people looked after me incredibly well. Who's this Pommy guy at 18 years of age going 12,000 miles trying to play a bit of rugby football? And I was just going to play one season of club rugby. That was it. And it was confounded very quickly, confounded by the fact that over here I only ever played fly half or fullback. And at my club side in New Zealand, the fullback was the captain, and his kid brother was playing 10. So they said, the only chance you got is playing 13. So when I told that story about marking Bruce Robertson before, I said to Stu Wilson the night before, I am worried about it because it'll be my 7th game at centre in a competitive match in my life. And he said, he used the F word. He said, keep that effing quiet. And it was just one of those to try to learn a new position as well. And I just told nobody. I said, yeah, I played centre before. And you just go with the flow, and you back yourself. You back yourself. But it could have easily backfired, I suppose, but fortuitously it didn't. And I was surrounded by really good people, both at club and provincial level.
Very good. Well, and just shouts growth mindset to me, with it that you're going with it, you're challenging yourself, which segues nicely on to the next question. With these conversations, speaking to high performers, we see a lot of the same traits, a lot of the same patterns: adaptability, resilience, growth mindset, humility, obsession. Do you think elite performance looks the same whether you're in the sport or the boardroom?
I think the boardroom's very different now with the way COVID has affected work patterns and things like that. I think it's a very different dynamic than being, you talk about high level rugby now, everything's done for you, pretty much. There's a backroom staff of plenty, with anything you want to do. I think you're much more accountable in the boardroom now. I think that it's very difficult with the dynamics. I mean, I've worked in the sports marketing industry, so, we don't need to have everybody in the office all of the time, but it's with what's happened with HR, in my early times, stoicism was the middle name. Our parents all went through the war. Nothing could be worse than that. Get on with it and do it and all the rest of it. I mean, that's just the way my generation were brought up post the Second World War. Now there's a lot more support systems, a lot more people willing to help. But at the same time, I think everybody's got to be judged by who they are, not collectively. And we all react differently. Some of us are a lot softer or harder or, more resilient than others. Is working out who those guys are. And one of the great beauties of sport, not necessarily rugby, in a team sport, You know, one of the first things I learnt in New Zealand, I learnt it before at school as well. If you're in our team, if you're in my business team, if you're in my work team, if you're in my sports team or whatever, I've got your back. I've got your back. It may not be me, it'd be your mate, you know, in the next sitting next to me or next to you or whatever the case may be. I've got your back. And which is one of the beauties of team sports. And I reckon in all the teams I played with, there were people that had my back every which way I went, sometimes off the field as well as on the field. And what a comfort that is. What a place to be in a work environment or a sports environment that, should I go down the wrong path, whatever the situation is, somebody's going to haul me back in. And some guys need to be hauled back in and be told, you know, to get on with it in a pretty direct, robust manner. Others, you can do it in a much softer way. And I think the boardroom's harder than the sporting environment, but I think the lessons you can take from sport can still very easily apply in the boardroom.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. Since COVID, it's the environment has changed, I think, in the last 2 or 3 years, and businesses seem to be a lot more fragmented, and actually trying to get people to make decisions. There seems to be a lot of planning and not much execution. I think I wrote a blog about this the other day. But going on now to leadership and culture, you've been very lucky to experience 2 leadership cultures in New Zealand and England, and probably 2 very different ones. How did leadership actually feel in the changing rooms, and what was the difference between England and New Zealand?
Well, the captains had a much bigger say back in the day, without question. I mean, my All Black captain was Graham Murray, who was a legendary All Black captain, because we had we had 2 coaches, the forwards coach and the backs coach. That was it, and a manager and a physio. That was the tour party, if you like. So the captain had a much bigger say. The same over here as well, whereas the captain ruled the roost a lot more, which was fine. Did they share responsibility as well as they could have done? Probably not. The All Blacks, it is very much a scenario whereby we are all in it together for sure, but there's an utter respect for the captain, because the All Black captain is put under so much pressure, you know, by the public and the expectation levels and all the rest of it. It's really, really tough. In England, you can get lost. You know, in New Zealand, it's really hard as the All Black captain to walk into a pub without somebody asking for something very politely and all the rest of it. Whereas if I'm England captain now, I know it's a very different with social media and all the rest of it. I can find a hole somewhere where nobody's going to recognise me or find me or whatever the case may be. So it is difficult. What did I take from each? I took that there's a very difficult job to lead. People lead in different ways, and it's like a coach. If I say 3 or 4 things and you pick up one, see that as progress, not that the other 2 are rubbish. This one applies to me. You know, Ian McGeechan was a classic. He would say 5 things. Say, if you pick up one, we've made great progress. The other 4 just don't apply to you. Doesn't mean they're rubbish or don't apply to Justin or Liam or Jamie or whatever the case may. You just pick up the one that works for you and is relevant to you. And I think that was very much the case back then and could still apply now. Does that make any sense to you guys?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah,
very much so. Interesting. You wrote recently about the Ryder Cup, how belonging and identity drive performance more than data, specifically talking about how the Europeans all wore the same shirts, including the caddies. How do you feel that translates to rugby teams or even business?
I just think the little things, 2 or 3 little things, can add up to an awful lot. And the analogy I use of the Ryder Cup is that the European caddies were deemed worthy enough to wear the same shirt as their player. So Rory McIlroy's caddy wore exactly the same shirt, colours that Rory did. The opposition thought otherwise. The caddies of the American team had a different colour shirt, which I thought was really odd. You know, one team and all the rest of it. And there have been 2 or 3 other things that happened that collectively can add up to a lot. You know, why would you not have the player and caddy in the same kit, the same uniform? They're side by side for 4 hours walking down the fairways and onto the tees and across the greens and all the rest of it. The European Tour looked as one. They looked together. There was a unison, there was a belief, there was a bond, whatever words one wants to use. And again, it's a bit of a marketing slang as well, in that I know the Europeans had a great first 2 days. They hunted in pairs, whereas the Americans hunted alone. And I've seen it in business where on the business development side, there's been a singleton, somebody that just goes off and tries to crack deals, which is fine and dandy and all the rest of it. But you can get overly possessive about that. We know it's your lead. Justin, we know it's your lead. You've brought in this guy, all the rest of it. But how about bringing in a colleague? How inviting them to bring a colleague so we get a bit more depth around this and we get more, evolved and inclusive about it. Rather than me just going down the same path on my own, bringing other people. I'm not going to get on with everybody. That client is not going to stay there forever. So by bringing in somebody else and ingratiating them and making them feel part of the team, look at a wider picture and how we can actually, at the end of the day, in the business sense, you want to be sending out invoices. You have to send out invoices to, to survive. In the rugby game, we need to win more than we can lose. We're charging good money for people to come and see it and all the rest of it. We gotta win as best we can.
Yeah,
and so I think that sense of belonging. There's little things that can really bring together a team of people. And I'm sure there was with the Red Roses, who were amazing for the World Cup stuff. I'm sure there were little things there that gave traction and directed them down a path that was amazing.
I see it like my main business as well, is I deal with law firms, and immediately there's a division. They have lawyers, or they call them fee earners, and then they have support staff. And there's already a massive division, and why can't they all be one team? And that creates boundaries, it creates issues, it creates disagreement. So I think it's very subtle what a European team did, playing as one team. I think all business can learn from that. It's a great message.
And I was going to say that I totally agree with you, Jamie. But I do wonder, playing devil's advocate, is that and living here in the US, is that a reflection of the sort of individualistic nature of the American compared to the Brit or the European, that they are a little bit or can be a little bit more individualistic as opposed to collective in their outlook. And again, is the proof in the pudding in so much as, well, the Europeans won, so is that it? Who knows? I don't know enough about golf to comment, but for me, building teams, you want everyone feeling part of it and having investment in the group.
Yeah, you get everyone involved in the decision making, Fitzy. Everyone from junior staff all the way up. That's how the business grows. So moving on to adversity, Jamie. I mean, you've obviously faced some tough moments in your career. You talk about when you faced England. I can't remember the name of the guy, but he said something to you like pretty much like, "Watch your back." How do you how do you handle pressure like that, and how do you actually? I'm not saying that that's an adverse situation, but how do you deal with difficult situations where you're put under pressure and perhaps adverse situations as well?
Yeah, it was difficult. I didn't enjoy it. That tour, there was far too much coverage on me and what I might do if I got on the test team and become a guy that played for England and New Zealand. It wasn't fair on the rest of the squad. It certainly wasn't fair on the other backs and centres that were in the touring party. I found it all pretty uncomfortable. I like to think I don't seek the limelight. I didn't try and milk it or anything like that. And it was quite interesting when the first test team got announced for the game in Christchurch. Murray Mexted, the All Black number 8, who I'd played a lot with at Wellington and was the All Black number 8 the next day, rang me out in my room and said, fantastic, great achievement. Lads are looking forward to seeing you. What we're going to do after the game is X, Y, and Z, and we're going to finish up at this club or bar and all the rest of it. So I said, great, Max, look forward to seeing you, blah, blah, blah. And then he said, oh, and by the way, if you come back on a switch, I'm going to take your bloody head off, okay? Good to see you. All right. We'll put the phone. So nothing had changed from that side of the fence. So I didn't change the rules. It wasn't me trying to be exceptional or anything else, just the way the circumstances worked out. It could have easily been somebody else. John Gallagher might have followed suit, 3 or 4 years later, understandably, or he can speak for himself, Kipper, elected to go to Rugby League, took an offer from Rugby League after the All Blacks won the World Cup in 87. So he went back, went to League for whatever number it was. Good on him. Was tricky, and I went into my shell a bit for 2 or 3 days. I find it tricky to handle. I think it's, we've all been dropped. I mean, I got dropped a couple of times. We've all had things not go our way. We've all had a bad injury where in those days you're left on your own pretty much to find your physio and find your rehab and all those sort of stuff. But it's tricky, and it's then where, going back to when I first walked in that dressing room, is picking those 2 or 3 mates that became close to, and say, I'm really pissed off. Throw wobbly, throw around, throw the toys out. And then one of them says, hold on a minute, your life isn't that bad, really, is it? I mean, you've done a bit and all the rest of it. So you then go back to the guys you'd met who have probably been through the same scenario or fought through the same scenario. And it's tough. It's tough. We don't, if you're in a competitive environment, you don't like missing out. You don't like being dropped. You don't like, you've pitched for some business in the meeting room with 2 other agencies and you don't win it. And you work your backside off with a team of people doing research, presentations, what's the USP, what sets us apart, and suddenly you don't get it. It's pretty galling. It's pretty galling. That scenario is a lot easier to take because there's 4, 5, 6 of you that have worked on that pitch, probably only 2 front of house. Whereas when you get the call saying you've been dropped, suddenly I'm just in this room by myself. And it's hard. It's hard.
For sure. What sort of advice would you give to a young player going through the same situation, or as a business person who hasn't closed the deal and they've worked so hard for? What sort of advice would you give them to overcome those setbacks?
I would seek clarity. I mean, they've got a situation now whereby you can go to an analyst and say, can I have 6 clips of what I've done in the last game or not done, or whatever the case may be. The analysis is there, plain to see. And if you are proactive and you say, what can I do that's better? How did my pitch presentation in the boardroom, how could that gone a bit better? Was I not very lucid on that slide that was actually quite crucial? And did I look the chap I want to learn from in the eye and say, how do I take this forward? In a quite a soft way or whatever. And in a business sense, if he looks away from me, takes a sip of coffee, he doesn't want to do business with me. Same in a one-to-one on a director of rugby or a coach or whatever. He should be ready and willing to help me become a better player. Now, if I repeatedly cock up, that's a different dynamic. But, it is. I feel for these young guys today. I really do. And I've got a number of mates whose sons have gone into the professional game. It is an incredibly fickle business, I'm afraid to say, because you are an ACL or a selectorial whim away from oblivion. And when I was 18, 19, 20, I was never going to get dropped and I was never going to have a major injury. Just the way I think a young man's mind works. Yet the same bloke that signed me on the dotted line into the academy is going out the door to sign the 16-year-old to replace me in a couple of years' time, probably, because it's all pathways and da 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 da. So, you've got to believe in yourself. There's always tomorrow and all the rest of it, but I really hope that they are being educated now for the need that they're going to need a second career. Our rugby guys are 2 naught shy of the football lads on a weekly basis in terms of their salary. The one thing they do know is they'll need a second career. And And there's ways to go about that they can be really proactive on, really proactive. And I hope they're encouraged to be, because I'm afraid they are going to get dropped. They are going to have an injury. I pray it's when they're 34 and they played 300 games for Sale or Leicester or whatever the case may be. But we know that the numbers aren't like that. We just know the nature of the game now and the physicality of the game now. You've got to get prepped for what comes next.
Actually, Jamie, you made such an important point earlier on in the conversation about sometimes people when they're, I think sometimes the difference between an elite performer and an average performer is they ask questions and are not afraid to do it and are not afraid to hear stuff that they don't want to hear. So like, why haven't I not been picked? And I think you need to encourage perhaps business, or if you want to get on in business, to ask those difficult questions. Don't bury your head in the sand. I also think what you've said about dealing with adversity is very typical. Like, I don't think anyone should be ashamed of like shutting themselves away for a day or two and processing that information. But when they come back, they all say the same thing. Network is important, perspective, speaking to people. That's how you deal with adversity, but never. The golden message is, you said, is never be afraid to ask someone for feedback. We need to encourage it more, and particularly for players as well. So, yeah, no, thank you for that point. So moving on to the next bit, what business can learn from sport. What lesson or lessons do you think translate best from sport into business?
I think integrity is a big thing, and honesty. I think in terms of performance driven. You can't practice pressure. You speak to the big guns on this, like Johnny Wilkinson, who's got a slot a drop goal or whatever. And when we're making a big pitch to win a bit of business off a brand to go and sponsor the world or whatever the case may be, it's how you replicate that situation. And when you have your dress rehearsal, are we, replicating this in the right way? So suddenly there's a curveball in the 14th minute. In a rugby sense, the coach suddenly says, right, penalty to Leicester, we're kicking for goal, as if it's a game situation and all the rest of it. So I think the way you try and replicate the situation, replicate the business opportunity is really important. I think the challenge with team sports is that it's so quick and impactful, and 18 minutes just flies by. And, to be fair to Clive Woodward, teacup, thinking clearly under pressure was one of the great things to my eyes, because it's applicable in a boardroom just as much as it is, and suddenly you're evaluating, you're analysing, and you're making these pitches, and you've got four people opposite you. There's one not so engaged as the other three. How do I bring him in? How do I entice him in and try and get him to be really engaged with the presentation we're trying to do? I think sport can really help business in that. So I think they're transferable in business as well. But I think that the ability for sport to show under pressure, you've got to make the right call more times than not. And I think that if you've got your team behind you and you're honest in your endeavours and you've done your homework and you've done your prep, more times than not, you'll win out in terms of performance. You may not win the game, but you'll win out in terms of performance.
That's a great message there, Jamie, because at the end of the day, if you concentrate on performance, practice and process, and you got the structure right, 9 times out of 10, the result will take care of itself and you alleviate the pressure. And I think that that's a big message that business can take from sport about handling pressure.
Very much so.
You spoke earlier about, and it really came across in spades, how players within the club system in New Zealand and up the guys there that really had your back. Do you think enough leaders in business really understand how to build trust under pressure?
Good call. Good shout. It's a hard one to judge. I think there's a need to do it. I think because they need to delegate. They need to trust their guys alongside them, their people alongside them, that they're going to deliver what they should deliver and what I've appointed them to deliver, to be honest with you. I mean, in the rugby parlance, I pick you at hooker so you can throw the bloody ball in the 20 times we have a line out and we win 90% of it, and in a business sense, I've appointed a guy who done the research on an FMCG brand and their market share and where they need to grow and where they're not growing or whatever the case may be. I need to support and back that person. So I'd like to think they do. There's the odd control freak that wants to do it all and take the plaudits for it all. I like to think there is. You've got to. If you don't trust your team, you're going to come second a lot of the time. I would suggest. If you've got a team that wants to act as one and conduct themselves as one, and there's nobody running out of the team circle to try and be in the limelight. I think, yeah, the businesses that I've been involved in, they have trusted the troops, as it were. So yeah, I think they do build trust under pressure. I'd like to think they do, because otherwise it's a tricky road.
As a leader, bringing new people into your team, for example, how do you engender that trust with those people? So they trust you, you trust them. Do you have a process that you employ for that?
Yeah, it's their specialist subject. They take the lead on it.
Okay.
And if you want help on it, we can offer this, and this. But you're our lead person on this. Yeah, you're the one to do it. And how we then might just tweak it a little bit to make it relevant to who we're presenting to or pitching to or whatever the case may be. But it's their lead. They've got the brief. They've replicated the situation whereby we're going to be presenting whatever the situation is or the pitch is for. But yeah, it's their baby. It's got to be their baby. It's about taking ownership, and they've got to take ownership of that segment. There's nothing worth going, and it's like now, they say they're captains, but there's co-captains and different leaders. How boring is it if you go to a pitch presentation or you go to a sports presentation and it's just one voice? It's just one voice covering a multitude or an area of business that they can't possibly be the expert in completely. They can have an overall view, they can cherry pick, and they can see this works better today than tomorrow, fine and dandy. But one voice doesn't, I don't think, work. I don't think it works, because is this guy a control freak? Is this guy, does he delegate? Does he trust his team? Does he have a depth of quality people? I'd be asking those sort of questions.
So just going on, digging into that a bit further, Jamie, how do you think, obviously I think your father had a military background. How do you think leaders win the trust of the troops on the ground, so to speak, in military terms? How do they earn that trust?
By going the extra mile, by being there for them. Can I help?
Yeah.
What else can I do? What other resources can I bring to you to make you a better player or a better performer or a better businessman or better contribute to our P&L or whatever the case may be? If you see your leader, your captain, whatever the case may be, head coach, managing director, CEO, taking a bona fide, a genuine interest in your role, in your contribution, how you put it across, how you may need to put it across better, and they can help with that, or whatever the case may be. If you're aloof, you come second. That's a bit of a drastic statement, but if you're aloof and you're not engaged, do you deserve to win more than you lose? I'm not so sure.
It's gold. I think communication, like you say, leading from the front, but communication, showing that you care, because too many business managers or leaders are directive before they've earned the trust of the troops, and therefore that creates division or potential toxicity in a work environment. So yeah, no, great answer. So moving on, sorry, I missed that. Moving on to community and the future of rugby. Now, this is obviously an important subject. You said that the values of rugby far outweigh the injury crisis. What do you mean by that? And are we too focused on what's wrong with the game rather than what's right at the moment?
I think we have to acknowledge we have two games. We have a professional game and an amateur game. And the professional game is, call it 1% of the rugby playing population, and 99% is the community game. And the professional game is such now whereby they spend as much time with their strength and conditioning coaches as they do their rugby, which is fine. Absolutely fine. They are unbelievable athletes with an unbelievable amount of ability at the top end. Absolutely fantastic. You know, the problem I have with it all is that I know people that go to international matches and are up and down in the crowd, get stuck in, do this, do that. They're great, they're great, all this. And the next day are saying, that game's way too tough for my grandson to play. We talk collisions all the time. We talk car crashes. We talk brutal. We talk hits. All the stuff that a mum of an 8, 10, 12, 14-year-old doesn't really want to hear. I can create, and zillions of other people who do unbelievable work in the communities and rugby clubs, can create a really safe, engaging, friendly environment for your 6, 8, 10, 12-year-old, whose chances of becoming Ollie Chesham, I'm afraid, are negligible. They're just, very unlikely to happen. So don't think the professional game is like the amateur game, because they are so far apart, it's not funny. At my local club, I've got guys as big as Ollie Chesham. They just go out for lunch a lot more and don't have a strength and conditioning coach making them, the athlete that Ollie is and all the other guys are, which is great. So we have to acknowledge that the amateur game and the community game can thrive brilliantly, without question. But the physicality of the top end is affecting the participation levels of kids coming into the game. It just is. It just is. And we know about, the Lewis Moody announcement of today, which was horrible and, terrible to read and see and all the rest of it. We know of the court case against World Rugby about onset dementia. It's beyond what I ever thought might happen in this game, but there's one common denominator, is they're all professional rugby players. They were all professional rugby players, whereby I would love to have been a pro to see training at 10 in the morning, how good I could be, rather than 7 at night, and then having to iron a shirt and go to work the next morning on the tube. So we are in this real dilemma that I think the professional game is affecting the participation levels of the amateur game, because they see the physicality of these unbelievable athletes, and they really are unbelievable athletes. How do we address that? That, this 8-year-old still goes down to his local rugby club and learns about teamwork, can do hand-eye coordination, giving and taking, learning what being in a team is and having the back, respecting the referee, all those values that rugby can bring that are in some ways life skills for these young boys and girls. I just think it's fantastic. But I just think that we are, we've got adverts going on about hits now. There's a piece in the paper last week about a coach for the collision area of the game. Mums don't want to hear about collision areas. They really do not want to hear about the brutality of it and the worst of it. The under-8s at Farnham Rugby Club, my club, has got safeguarding written all over here, and every other club has as well. Do not judge us. We've got people that just go to Twickenham and watch Test match rugby and don't see what's going on down here, and with the 6, 8, 10, 7-year-old, 9-year-olds, where there is an unbelievable do they get knocks? Of course they get knocks. Do most 10-year-old, 12-year-olds want to get stuck in and make a tackle? Absolutely, they do. So I get what's happening at the top level, and I get the language to a degree. I don't like it. I never thought in my lifetime rugby would be talked about car crashes and collisions and brutality and all the rest of it. That's 1% of the rugby playing population, if that. So I think it's really tough, but we have to separate the pros, who, as I say and repeatedly say, are unbelievable. They are amazing athletes now, but it's not relevant to the amateur game and not relevant to 8, 12-year-olds coming into the game. But the numbers are down and will continue to go down, sadly.
So 2 points on that, Jamie. First of all, about character. I mean, before I come on to 2 points, I mean, it helps kids not only develop in terms of hand-eye coordination, but personality. It brings on kids, like polishes them, makes them better people. We all know about the values, but 2 things where I think perhaps rugby could improve, regardless of the injury crisis, is number one, when a lot of the younger players go into academies, I mean, the stats of them actually getting a pro contract, I mean, what's it, less than 5%? And then a lot of those players are lost because they're tied to their professional clubs and not to their local clubs. And I think we're losing a lot of players there. And the second thing is what I think, and this, I've spoken about this to people, our professional clubs investing enough in their mini rugby section? I don't know. I think that more time should be invested in that area, and it tends to be like neglected. I'd be interested to get your views. And the third aspect, I said two, but there's third. I don't think that the clubs are engaging the fans or the business community enough. I know that Fitz is going to ask that question in a minute. So, but I was just seeing your views on all three of those points are raised.
Yeah, but we've got a situation there where players who don't become pros are giving up the game.
Yeah.
You know, they're
Big problem.
just not going to go and play a couple of levels down or whatever, where they can have an amazing time.
Yeah.
But if I'm running rugby, God forbid that I'm running World Rugby, but my crystal ball, and I'm doing a bit of crystal ball gazing, like in 5 years' time. Where are we going to be in 5 years' time? And I know that people don't like praising the Rugby Union, the England Cricket Board, the Football Association, all the rest of it. But if I'm running rugby in 5 years' time, for the current situation, are we becoming more of a spectator-based sport than a participating-based one? Because if we are, we're in deep shit. Really are. I mean, American football is a different dynamic with the college system. If you don't make it, there's nowhere else to play at the NFL. There isn't, 6 leagues under the NFL. So how are we going to make sure our participating levels and everything you can benefit from that can be on at least flat, but going on an upward trend? Now, they brought in T1 rugby. Fine. Contact's not for everybody. T1 is a non-contact form of the game. Fine. Not everybody wants contact. I get that. It ain't going to help the rugby clubs up and down the lane. It just isn't. So it's a really difficult dynamic to work out, but we have to keep pushing and probing that playing rugby at a community amateur rugby club has multiple benefits, both in playing the sport and thereafter. And we have to keep pushing that, and the rugby unions have to keep pushing that. It really does. And we now find, you could argue that the test matches at multiple stadiums, it's an event crowd, not a rugby crowd. It's 180 quid a ticket. And as soon as I see a lanyard, I'm thinking, really, and how big's the corporate element of it? I get it's part of it. I get all that. I really do. But, build a family stand. Say this section of the stand is for mums and dads with two under 16-year-olds, because they can't afford to go there 150 quid, 180 quid a ticket. So I think we've got to show a bit more lateral thinking in engaging the young to play the game. I really do. And
absolutely,
you've got a scenario where the Premiership Rugby is now on a Thursday night. They've got games on a Thursday night. My youngest kid's furious. He's training Thursday night.
Yeah.
But, you can't have everything.
So I was going to ask one question, but I'm going to morph it into two, because I think this is a fascinating subject. My original question was going to be, if you were running a Premiership club tomorrow, what would you do to reconnect fans and players? To follow up on that, if you were leading and running the community side of the game, what would you do to bridge some of the points that you've made and improve the recruitment and retention of players and families and fans into the community side of the game?
It's interesting. I keep hearing that we need a new audience, and we've got to attract a new audience and a new range of people. Never forget to fertilize the audience you've got, and keep fertilizing the audience you've got. The die-hard guys and supporters that go from Exeter to Sale to watch the game. So keep hearing about a new audience in lots of different areas and how to best go about it. I would always say, never bite off the hand that feeds and that has fed for multiple years, and don't alienate them. Don't make things so different and drastic. And we don't. But a lot of people are there to just watch a game of rugby. They're quite happy just watching a game of rugby and having a couple of beers with their mates afterwards. Engaging in the local rugby clubs is absolutely imperative. Get them on board. Get them on board. If you, I mean, we're lucky. I mean, I'm at Farnham Rugby Club and have been for 20 years. 3 boys have been through it. We've always picked up a Harlequin coach. James Chisholm comes down and does the forwards on a Tuesday night. The eyes are like this. He played on Saturday for Harlequins against Saracens or Bath or against, tip-top players and all the rest of it. And things like that mean the world to these players. Absolutely means the world. So the more you can get... And my other thing is that, this is a bit on a rant, but I honestly think the goal at football or whatever the case, but they tend to follow heroes before they follow sports. And suddenly, Finn Russell walks into a club in the Southwest, or, Tom Curry walks into a school in Manchester and all the rest of it. That is worth volumes. Absolute volumes. Absolute volumes. And the more, and they can't do everything. Of course they can't do everything and all the rest of it. But the more they can build up their players in a 20-mile, 25-mile community. A lot of our English clubs are very lucky because Bath, Gloucester, Exeter, Northampton, Leicester have got good catchment areas around their neck of the woods. Quins and Saracens, a bit trickier in the city centre, but the more you can do. So I don't think it's so much as a new audience. It's just getting the touch points right with your local audience.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to pick up on that. I mean, there's four things there. Number one, like mini rugby, I'll go on about that, or youth rugby. Sometimes I think that professional clubs need to push their players to go down there on a Sunday morning so they meet the heroes, because that's going to engage the youth to want to play rugby when they meet Finn Russell on a Sunday morning coaching. I think clubs should push that a bit more. Secondly, which not many clubs get at all, legacy. Like, the legacy of the ex-players and the legacy of fans, that could be monetized and used into a business club, or even I've seen like clever things where you have a roll of honor of ex-players or big supporters and family members. See, that engages people. A business club. Players have got a massive advantage when they're playing, where they can engage a ready-made business audience on LinkedIn. And they should be doing that when they're playing. It's a great platform to build engagement because they're less likely to get trolled on it as well. So all of those points, I think, is a way that we could bring it back. And the final point, as we discussed, is academies, losing those 95% of players because they're like at an academy with Harlequins when they're 15. Where do they go when they don't make it? They haven't got an identity, and we need to bring all of that on board, and that makes rugby probably a better product. But I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but that's just what I'm hearing, perhaps from you, and perhaps what I see. So would you agree, Fitzy, or?
I would, and I think back to practical terms, when we were playing at London Irish, that there was and again, crossover between amateur and professional times. It's a long time ago, but I think you've hit upon the nail on the head, and we were assigned and encouraged to go down on a Sunday morning to various teams within the minis and youth, and I remember it clearly because I really enjoyed doing it. I was sent down to the under-16 teams, and this certainly, what I'm going to say, is not a reflection on anything that I did at that point, because I was young and didn't know what I was the coach. But out of that group, one England Sevens player came through, Simon Amor, and one full Irish international, and Kieran Campbell came through. So now I don't take credit for any.
That's a fly half and a scrum half.
Well, exactly. I don't take any credit for it, but it just shows you, what can happen with, or what can be aided with a little bit of support from the professional players.
And leading on to that point, it just missed the start of the professional era. But I know that you were commentating on Sky. I mean, me and Fitzy moved from amateur into professional. What do you think the game was lost by going professional, and what do you think is gained by going professional?
Is it a better game? Probably. It's a really good question. It's a really good question because there have been some downsides, and I'm sorry to start on the downside, but there have been some downsides with what's happened with the physicality of the game. You are changing bodies, Richie McCaw's lost 2 stone since he retired. It is a very physical, confrontational game. Is it a better game? Yeah, they're better athletes. Some of their skill sets are fantastic. Don't get me wrong; they really are. I think it is a better game. But there is, I'm afraid, a little question mark against it. In terms of what's happened with the onset dementia, and they are taking as many preventive steps as they possibly can, you know, with GPS monitors, with mouth guards that indicate to the analyst when they've had a big hit and they get taken off or whatever the case may be. Yeah, I don't know. It's a very good question, Liam. Is it a better game? It has to be, because they are proper athletes, but by God, they're big. You know, were you know, left wingers meant to be the size of what these guys are, and fullbacks and centres and all the rest of it. And it's really interesting. You know, the biggest growth in New Zealand rugby is the under 85 kilogram league, under 86 kilogram league. Hundreds of them playing under 86 kilogram league that they've got in New Zealand. They've been on tours. There's now a national team of under 86 kilograms. So it'd be really interesting if that sort of thing happened over here. But it is a bit of a worry.
Yeah, I think the in terms of perhaps where it's lost. I mean, the game's probably a better product, as you say, in terms of the professional game, but it's probably lost a little bit of its sense of community. You know, the old days where you can go into a clubhouse and get a job, and you know, people would help. I think the professional clubs have lost maybe a bit of that aspect in terms of it's more of a division between the clubs and the fans, whereas before it was a sense of community. Would you agree on that point?
Yeah, I would. People
Yeah,
say it's still young. I would argue 30 years on, you should be getting more right than wrong.
yeah,
And I know that obviously financially, clubs and unions have really been struggling, and they've had to change the model, the dynamic. And you know, if it was a PLC, it would have gone bust a long time ago. The board would have been sacked a long time ago, with the amount of financial losses that have been happened. I just hope that there is a path and a way forward for what is an amazing game, but it brings amazing benefits to people, and they can produce amazing performances. They are amazing athletes. Don't get me wrong. And I'm a bit morose because of Lewis Moody's news, which is desperately sad. 47 years of age. And there's obviously, as we know, been others. And they are working their backsides off to try and make things as safe as humanly possible. I know that for a fact. I don't believe in HIAs. If somebody's had a head knock, don't have an HIA, just somebody else come on. Why do you need to go through an HIA, that process, and that risk of potentially coming on again? Just take them off.
Yeah. I mean, I think you mentioned an idea, the concept. You had a red shorts for kids that you spoke about to me, which was seemed a good idea. I'd also so that it teaches kids to tackle lower and perhaps made the game safer a little bit. But spoke about, or I've spoken about to Fitzy in the past. There are other areas where the game is really progressing and it's engaged, like Japan and some of the French clubs, where they're engaged in the local community, and financially the numbers stack up.
Yeah, and you know, the amateur game could easily thrive. They're struggling for numbers. That's where you tackle. That's where you go. The RFU issued a thing about the sternum a couple of years ago, which went down like a lead balloon. You know, you're going to tell a 10-year-old to tackle below the sternum? Where's the sternum? How many 10-year-olds know where the sternum is? You know, so Red Short's idea is not perfect. Don't get me wrong, it's not perfect, but it creates something visible on the field, which to me as a mum or a dad, that's that. And if my lad tackles just above the red short, we keep changing laws all the time, not just for safety and head reasons, but if we have a target for red shorts, yes, they'll get a bang, they'll get a knock, but you speak to the muscle memory specialist. If I ingratiate into a 7, 8, 9-year-old about dropping the knees, bending my legs from the calves and going in low with my leading arm and grabbing onto something and all the rest of it. That will manifest itself upwards as they go through the age grades. As I say, there are other ways of getting into a rugby field, but everybody wearing red shorts, that's where you tackle. That's where you go. You can't go upright. And we are a game of movement. It's going to happen, I'm afraid. There are going to be situations where somebody comes off their left foot at the last possible minute, and I can't bend my knees, and I have gone too high. It's not intentional. But the more we can do to make it safer and to show people that the amateur game, community game, is not the top end. It is a totally different game. It's a totally different game. They're spending all their time with the strength and conditioning coaches and the rugby coaches, which is great, which is fantastic. They are proper pros. What they're seeing up there, and it does affect the community game. But there is a huge place for the community game, and we need to push that in the UK, globally, whatever we possibly can.
Absolutely.
Right, Jamie, we're into the quick fire questions. So don't overthink them. Toughest
Great
opponent.
answers.
Sorry, Ravi.
Your
toughest opponent. Philippe.
Yes.
Philippe Salah.
Yeah,
Philippe
you're not the
Salah
only one who
was,
said that. Yeah.
Tricky.
That's one way to describe it.
Proper player.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most underrated teammate.
Rob Lazowski played for Wasps, but we played for London Division together. I think he got 1 cap for England, Rob. A bit like his lad Alex, has probably deserved, well, certainly Rob and Alex both deserved a few more caps, but Rob was very direct, good distributor, all-round good guy, never moaned, never wins, got on with it, did it, match after match, year after year. As I say, and I think he played 1 November when England beat Australia quite comfortably. I'd never got another look in. So Rob was unlucky.
1 word to describe the All Blacks.
Iconic.
1 word to describe
they win
England rugby.
77% of their games, I think, is their average. Over 77% of their games. And I think of all the teams in rugby, they're the only ones you could argue that could have iconic status.
Yeah, I would agree. 1 word for England rugby.
What, the team? Red Roses, amazing. The men's team might sound very harsh, but underachievers. Still underachieve, I would suggest, but the Red Roses are amazing.
Best coach you played under?
Ian Upson would be one who was my Wellington coach when I was a kid. In terms of confidence building and saying at 18 and a half, 19, you're here because I think you're the best centre in Wellington, was amazing. Brian Ashton, who was ahead of his time with the England setup back in the day. He was the guy that, those big tall tackle bags you get, but he got 5 tall tackle bags put on the 22. I'm going to say they were 5 yards apart, something like that. And all the forwards were on the try line and they were on the 22. And he said, what do you see? Easy, 5 tackle pads. And of course, Brian said, no, I don't see any tackle pads at all. I see space in between. That's what we want. We want space. And which now, with the go-to person that goes straight into Justin to set it up again and da-da-da-da, that was Brian. That I see space. And when you see that space, you go. I don't care if you're 90 yards away from the other opposition try line, we're on. When you see that space, we're on. Doesn't matter where you go. My kind of coach.
Yeah, very smart man. Hardest moment in your career? Could be playing, could be business.
Certainly. And also, I think it was 83 where I tore the backside out of my hamstring. It was like getting shot. I was just put in the sheds. I was 10 minutes in, put into the sheds for half an hour because they didn't, they just what they did back in the day. A physio came in, put a bit of ice on it. I mean, it was just excruciating. I mean, it really did feel as though I'd been shot. Thankfully, it's different now, and the medical services are different now.
Mo and I never moved fast enough to pull hamstrings, so
we never had hamstrings as props, did we, in those days?
Exactly. Leadership trait you most admire?
Honesty. Just be honest with me. Just be honest. Good, bad, or indifferent. Just be honest. Don't bullshit me. Don't send me round the houses. Just be honest. Just be honest.
What's next for Jamie Salmon?
Oh, I'm going to still keep pushing this community game thing. I want as many people as we can get to go and join rugby clubs at 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Embrace it. See how that environment can really benefit your child. The life skills they can learn from that, the hand-eye coordination, looking after a mate, all those attributes, I just think are central to our game, which has been brilliant. I've had 3 boys through it over the last 20 years, and it's been amazing. A lot of these guys realise very early they're not going to play for Harlequins, Bath, Bristol, whatever, but they still have their teams and they want to be the best they can be, which can be really good in some instances. But by God, can they meet some great people and have some great times and have some great fun along the way. And whether they pack in at 28 because they've just had their first child or whatever the case may be, it doesn't half, I think, lend you some life skills without question. But if you go through life having the back of your mate, it's not a bad thing, is it?
No, not at all. Couldn't agree more, and wish you every success with that. Jamie, your career bridge, go on, Jamie. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Thanks, and I suspect I've ranted on a bit on some issues, but I really hope that this great game can flourish and continue to flourish, both numerically and successfully at all levels of the game. And I mean that with all sincerity, because it can do wonders for people, both young girls and young boys, as we've seen recently. Here's hoping, as they say.
I think you encapsulated it. Would you agree, Fitzy, what you just said about the opportunities that rugby gives you, the people that you meet? It's second to none. Yes, there are injuries, but that's all sports. I mean, like Serie A in football, there's links with dementia, early onset dementia, and heading the ball. All sport has risks, but the opportunities are there. That's what I think. Would you agree?
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So, Jamie, thanks for coming on the show. I mean, I still think, are you still the only person that's ever played for England and the All Blacks? Is there anyone else?
No, there isn't. So I'm going to write a book, have a film made, and try and cash in as much as I possibly can.
It's just like, it's an amazing story.
I think it'll happen sometime. I mean, there's been others between Ireland and Argentina, Australia, Brian Smith, the fly half. There's been others.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's been a number from the Fiji, Tonga, Samoas of this world with New Zealand and Australia, but not England, New Zealand, no. Not
an English guy. What about John Gallagher? No, John Gallagher never played, did he, for England? So, although he was close to getting picked for Ireland, I think, Fitzy, at one point.
Yeah, I heard that, yeah.
All the Ireland selectors were interested in him. So thanks, Jamie. Thank you for your time. It's been wonderful speaking to you, and like the insights that you've given us for all the business community. It's been fantastic. It's been wonderful to hear from you.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us, Jamie.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks, Liam.
Thank you.